In 3, 2, hello. You are listening to Finding My Way, a podcast where we interview students and faculty of various disciplines to help prospective students learn more about the fields that they are interested in. Today, we'll be covering the Bachelor of Science, Astronautical Engineering, offered at USC through the Viterbi School of Engineering. Here to tell us a little more about it is Carlos Cardona, a rising senior at USC from Cali, Colombia. Carlos, thank you so much for joining us here today.
Oh, thank you for having me, man.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I know you definitely have one of the more unique stories coming in out of the rest of our guests. You came from Colombia over to LA. What was that experience like, and why did you come over?
It was very interesting. I came here, my father first came here in 2000. I was 5, and my mom and I didn't join him till 2005. It was mainly just escaping, violence and the lack of opportunities that we had in Colombia. Mm-hmm. Funny enough, my family was planning to go to New York. Every Colombian only knows New York, and we ended up here in San Diego. In San Diego, and we just loved it and just stayed here.
Wow. So you came over to escape the violence, and was it more for schooling or just for everything that the U.S. had to offer?
More for just survival, to be honest. Just everything.
Okay. And how old were you when you first came over here?
I was 9.
You were 9. Okay. So you were still pretty young.
Mm-hmm.
Was that transition kind of difficult?
It was, yeah. I remember about 2 weeks into being here, my dad dropped me off in elementary school, and I just kind of sat there. I mean, it was in a mostly white neighborhood, so no Spanish whatsoever. Everyone just spoke English, and I had not a clue of what anybody was saying. So I just sat there for many weeks, actually, and eventually I just kind of picked up English.
Was that kind of difficult? I mean, it obviously is, but one, going someplace where you don't speak the language, and 2, if everybody's only speaking English, part of you kind of feels like maybe the culture isn't there completely.
Extremely, yeah. I felt very left out. I remember crying a few times. I felt like I couldn't really make friends with anyone or get along with anyone. I did have just one friend, and she also spoke Spanish, so that's kind of why I talked to her. But other than that, yeah, I felt really, really out of it. Eventually, though, I just picked up English, and it was a smooth transition from then, kind of, getting into the classes and making friends.
How long did that take? Like high school, middle school? When did you feel like you were really able to connect with everybody else?
I would say it took about a year. Going into middle school, I definitely felt like I was strong enough in English that I could make friends. Mm-hmm. And I also went to a middle school in a different neighborhood, a lot more Latinos, a lot more people that I could kind of relate to and talk to. I also got into sports, so that definitely helped me out a lot.
Nice. Sports are the biggest unifier.
Yeah.
Nothing like them. You create the brotherhood around everybody else around you.
Absolutely.
It makes the best. And let me ask you this. Did you go straight to college right after high school, or what was your journey?
I did, yeah. So I played soccer most of my life. I played in high school. I ended up playing for a community college in San Diego. Mm-hmm. Played my first year, no problem. Was doing great. Tore my meniscus, kind of lost some motivation. I was stuck in a place where I didn't really have that outside motivation to go to college. My parents always pushed me college, but I didn't really have an example there or anybody to sit with me and be like, how are your grades? How are applications going? Things like that. So I ended up dropping out, working for a year, and then joining the Marine Corps.
What was that like, leaving everything and joining the Marine Corps?
It was great. It was a good chance to start all over. I'm not going to lie. My last year of community college, I did horrible. I had like a 1.0 GPA. Mm-hmm. I just stopped caring. So that was a really good restart on my life,
How did it restart you exactly? It was just going someplace where you start completely fresh. Nobody knows you. Everybody's in the same boat together.
Definitely, yeah. And then kind of like the discipline and change of mentality. it could have been the discipline from the Marine Corps itself, or just me maturing and growing as a person. But I realized that, I had to stop playing games and I had to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. And being in the Marine Corps about halfway through is when I was like, you know what, I need to go back to school. So I started taking classes here and there. Couldn't do much, I was traveling a lot, busy, working a lot. Ended up ending my contract in 2019 in July, and starting community college again, same school that I dropped out from, in August. I remember signing up for classes and I couldn't because I was on academic probation because they had my previous GPA.
Damn.
So I had to talk to my counselors and get a career plan going and everything.
And then once you actually went through that second time, what did you do to switch everything up?
Oh man, I was so much more mature. I mean, school was number one priority. All my time and effort went into my classes, learning. And yeah, I think it was just a big change of mindset that definitely helped.
And then when you went in that second time, was that when you realized you had some sort of love for aerospace and astronautical engineering, or did that happen later on or earlier?
Well, I've always had that, to be honest. I've always loved aircraft and rockets and everything. I actually joined the Marine Corps to do a job that had to do with aviation. I was an aviation ordnance technician, so I worked on helicopters, weapon systems, maintenance, everything related to them. So I've always had that love for aircraft and for flying objects.
What is it? What is it about it that just like fills you with passion?
Just the way it defies gravity and laws, and the way it just peacefully floats in the air. Not so peacefully, but it just goes through, and it's something that humans weren't naturally meant to do, but we figure out a way to do it and to master it.
So it's like defying nature. It's like showing like I'm the boss in a way.
Yep.
I love that. Okay. So it gives you that kind of freedom. So after junior college, did you apply to USC after how long? A year or 2 years?
It was about a year and a half. I had most of my prereqs done. However, the California school system, so when applying to CSUs and UCs for such an impacted major, they want you to have every single prerequisite done. So, man, it was a lot. Like, in order to do that, I would have had to basically get an associate's in engineering and take a bunch of classes that I wouldn't really use. So I was looking at my options, and USC was always up there. It was world-renowned school, engineering. Neil Armstrong came from USC. It's a big name. And then looking more into it, realizing that it's a private school, they don't have to be held to these requirements and these prerequisites. The only real prerequisite was to have 2 semesters of a lab-based or calculus-based lab, and then be done with like Calculus 2, more basic requirements,
Okay. And then what were they really looking for in an applicant? Were they focused more on work experience, studying?
Honestly, I think a big part was my story and the essays. I think that's something that a lot of people kind of don't put enough effort into. For example, my housemate, the guy I live with, he applied to USC last semester. He finished his essays in a day and submitted the application. And I was like, hey, man, that was quick. Like, you didn't want me to read through it, make sure everything was good. And he's like, no, it's done. And he got denied. I feel like essays is where you stand out from the rest, because everyone's just a number. Everyone, a bunch of people who apply to USC have 4.0s, 5.0s, really good SATs, and the economic methods or ways of paying for the school. So what really sets you apart is having that, I think, what is it, like 3 essays or so, like 3 or 4.
Yeah, where you really let your personality shine and you show you're more than a number.
Yeah, that's your one-on-one time with the person reading your application.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember when I was first applying to colleges, I got rejected from USC the first time.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, I went to community college for a year. But my first essay, when I sent it out, my UCs, I sent a poem for one of them. I sent a 7-line poem for one of the essays because I was like, screw it. It's either USC or community college. I don't care about anything else. And then the USC one, I think I really only put about 3 weeks worth of effort into it. Didn't get in. Second time, I worked my butt off for it. A solid 3 months I was writing, revising, sending it to my friends, getting their input. I think I changed topics like 6 times before I finally felt something was, okay, this is right. I'm ready to send this in. Which is funny.
And then it didn't feel like it was enough.
No, even then I was still like, nope, needs like 10 more revisions. Yeah. But let me ask you this. As far as the financials go, I know a lot of people going into USC are a little bit unaware about what kind of opportunities come up from there. If there are grants, scholarship opportunities. Do you know about any of those personally?
There is a lot of financial help. Mm-hmm. I believe if your family income is less than a certain amount, they cover 100% of tuition. Mm-hmm. But there is a lot of financial help. Luckily, and part of why I also joined the military was to get my education paid for. Mm-hmm. So I'm very blessed to have 100% of my tuition covered in my books.
It's amazing. Would you recommend that for other students out there that are a little bit worried about paying off college to go into the military first?
Absolutely. It's kind of up to the individual. A lot of me wishes that I would have just taken on the debt and gone to school quicker. And, because right now I have friends who like work at NASA, who work with Tesla, who are in their professions and have been at it for about 5 years now. Mm-hmm. I graduated high school in 2013. So just putting that out there. And, here I am kind of feeling like I'm behind the curve. But at the same time, we're all running our own race. Yeah. I don't regret a single bit of it. And I got this great benefit. So I definitely think if you are in a tough situation where you don't know how you're going to pay for college, the military can be a great way to do so. Mm-hmm. Not only that, there's people think like, holding a gun and shooting. There's many, many jobs. You can be a cybersecurity. You can be a weatherman if you want. Like,
I did not know that. You can be a weatherman. Interesting. Yeah.
I have a buddy of mine who's in the Air Force, and he's an air traffic controller. Mm-hmm. So the Air Force put him through air traffic controller school. Now, if he wants, he can get out and be an air traffic controller. Mm-hmm.
There you go.
Yeah.
So it teaches you the skills that you need beforehand. It's not all fighting and training like that. Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah. You just got to kind of do your own research and know what you want to go into, what you want to do, what interests you.
I feel like that's so important for anything that you go into, as long as you can find some minuscule thing that interests you, that you love, and you just put in the hard work, everything else will follow.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So let me ask this. When you first came to USC, what was it like studying astronautical engineering?
It was rough. I remember I was like, oh my God, this is so much more work than community college. Mm-hmm. At community college, I would study and put in work. Yeah. But it wasn't like all weekend, like I would enjoy my weekends. I would enjoy my time off. Mm-hmm. Then I got to USC and I'm like, oh God, this is a lot. And I was a 4.0 student my second time around, not the first time.
Oh yeah. There you go.
And then getting to USC and, I got almost all B's my first semester and I was so upset at myself, but I had to keep telling myself like, this is a really hard program. This is a tough major. It's a really hard school. There's a reason why it's a hard school.
Mm-hmm. And what were some of those classes that were difficult, or like very beneficial to you?
One of them that really, really stood out to me is AME 341A.
Okay.
NB, which is it's called Mechatronics.
Mechatronics.
Yes.
Okay.
It's mechanical mechanical, electrical, and optics.
What is that?
It's a class that USC made up, completely made it up. And the whole reason behind it is to make you a better engineer and an individual engineer. By that, I mean, like, you're assigned projects, you do these projects, and then you have a lot of freedom with your reports and how you go about reporting your findings, which is what made it extremely difficult. You know, we're so used to, like, did it work or not? You know, write this, write that. But no, this was like, do the experiment. Here's your data. Make something of your data, you know, like, find a meaning behind it. Does it fit the mathematical expectations? What do you think happens? Like, it really made you think like an engineer, and it really prepares you for, like, writing reports, creating Excel documents, just changed the whole way that I approached engineering, to be honest.
And this is a class that you said all the different types of engineers have to take? It's not just...
Mechanical, astronautical, aeronautical, and I think electrical engineers take it.
Okay.
Just those. Not 100% sure on electrical, but I know for sure mechanical, aeronautical, and astronautical.
So you had a love for space beforehand, but was there a certain reason that you decided to go the engineering route for it?
I've always liked how things work. Just knowing how they work and operate. I always took things apart when I was a kid. Can't say I always put them back together properly. Always had, you know, an extra screw or two. But it was that curiosity, I think, of how things work, how things operate, how the world around me is moving. I think that's what really got me interested in engineering.
Interesting, because you guys are the ultimate problem solvers.
So they say.
Yeah. Okay, and now you are entering your final, you have what, 2 semesters left of school, or 3?
I have 3 just because of USC didn't accept all of the GEs that I took at my community college. So I've had to take a couple extra classes. Okay,
so you have 3 semesters left, but you're walking this year, so congrats for that.
Thank you.
But now that you're reaching kind of the end of this journey, have you noticed that there were any misconceptions about the degree that you didn't know beforehand?
Oh, man. I think what a lot of people think is just, and what scares a lot of people is, you know, the math. When they're like, oh, man, you're an engineer, you must do calculus in your head, you know, or people who, I think a lot of STEM fields take Calc 1, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I believe so.
And I think they say that's like a rooting out class. So, like, you know, if you're meant to be in STEM, if you pass the class or not.
Yeah, weed out classes.
Yeah, those. And I think that's BS, you know. I feel like you don't have to be this math wizard. You don't have to be Einstein, you know, you don't have to do math in your head. I feel like it's a skill that you learn, and if you're passionate about the subject and if you really want to be an engineer, it shouldn't hold you back. You might not be great at it, but just like anything that you do in life, you practice it enough, you're going to get good at it, you know? And I'm not going to lie, I despise math. I hate it. But that's what mathematicians are for, you know? Engineers are there to solve problems and think of creative ideas and put it all together. You don't have to be this great math wizard. So I think that's a big misconception about the major, that a lot of people think like, oh man, you have to be like the super nerdy, geeked out math guy, but you don't, you know? Yeah,
no, actually, that's the way I always thought of it. If you don't love math, you can't succeed in engineering. But if you put in the hard work, if it's something that you're passionate about, then screw it. Give it your all. You can learn to do well in math instead of being afraid.
Exactly.
Huh. And what are the actual classes like? How big are they? What kind of courses do you take? Are they very interdisciplinary and throughout all the engineering fields?
So far, I've been taking more of general engineering classes. the class that I spoke about earlier, mechatronics, that's only offered junior year for juniors. So it's a 2-semester course.
Mm-hmm.
So you take the first class, part A, in fall and part B in spring. And that's when they're only offered. So like if you screw up on A, you can't retake A until the following year.
Oh, damn.
So because of that, the classes are pretty big. I think it was like 100 and something people.
Mm-hmm.
But that's for lecture. When you talk about your lab time, it's broken down throughout the week. And I think there's like 20 or so students in lab.
Oh, okay.
And my experience with the other classes so far has been about 20 to 30-ish people in a class at a time. So it's small.
Okay. And what are the relative lab classes that you have to take to the normal classes? Is it like one lab per normal class that you take?
Depends on the class. Most of your general education, like physics, have a lab.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't take chem at USC, but I'm pretty sure chem has a lab.
Okay.
Mechatronics has a lab. Right now, I'm going into my senior project, which is composed of a lecture and a lab.
It's a senior project, so it's something that you have to create yourself?
Yes.
What is that?
So it's our big kind of like capstone event, just to put everything we've learned together. We have to find something we want to solve, something we want to work on. And it's basically a semester-long experiment. We write reports and everything. USC is actually always competes in it's in this aerospace engineering competition, and we always place like top 3 in senior projects for the universities around the United States. Yeah.
Do you think it's through the USC Rocket Propulsion Lab? The one
no,
where
this is through American Institute of Aeronautics and Astronautics.
Interesting. And
yes.
Anybody can go into the competition?
So the way that it works, from what they explained to us last semester, is you do your senior project, and then the instructors kind of pick the top projects and submit those, and then hope for the best, hope to place in the top. And they actually, if you do place, USC will actually pay for you to go out to these conferences and present your project, present your findings. One of the projects from last year that placed in the top 3 was this group, and they wanted to find a way to capture the heat from braking in vehicles and capture that heat, turn it into energy, and store it. So it's kind of like regenerative braking in a car like a Tesla, where you use the motion of the wheels to charge up the battery again. They wanted to do that, but with the heat dissipated through braking, which is, every car brakes, every car generates heat, and that's lost energy. It was a limited, small-scale project, but they did have some very interesting findings, and they were able to capture certain amounts of energy. So it would be really interesting, to see some of these projects scaled up too big.
Yeah. Do you think any of the actual industries that are out there would take a look at these projects and try to implement them in their own companies, or try to work with USC students through them to make it a bigger scale thing?
I think so, yeah. There's actually a rocket company founded by some USC alums. Yeah. I think it's relativity space, yeah.
See, this is one thing I really do love about Viterbi, the fact that they help introduce the students with the industry, develop those connections early on, and you can see how it's really applied into the real world early on. Like, that's not something a lot of other schools do. Not a lot of other majors give you that opportunity to have hands-on experience in the actual industry. Yeah,
that's something that really attracted me to USC as well. It's it's a research institution. So I had the great opportunity my first year to be a research fellow at the Space Engineering Research Center. And we were working on developing a small satellite that is going to study the magnetic field of the Earth.
Wow.
Yeah, and that same research center actually just had one of our satellites launched by a SpaceX rocket. So
can you say that again? Can you just tell me that first sentence again, that you're sending a satellite out in space?
Yeah. We actually did. Well, not my group directly, but another group made this satellite with funding from some private companies and to carry out a mission for them, and it got sent out to space and through in a SpaceX rocket.
So you're working in a field that you can actually do this. You can make your own satellites, send them out into space, and live out your dreams. Like, think about that.
Yep,
that's insane.
Yeah, there's a lot of cool projects that our school does. There's a moon lander that they're working on. There's this little jellyfish thing that works with like electricity, and it can move around on its own. There's a lot of great opportunities.
Yeah, sounds like it. Well, let me ask you this, Carlos. For the next step, when most people go out, they get the bachelor's in astronautical engineering. In order to get a job, do most people go for a master's, a PhD afterwards, or can you get a decent job right afterwards with just the BS degree?
Most of the people that I know and that I have actually had the same question for that work in the industry now only have a bachelor's, and they've told me that they don't see a master's necessarily in their near future. They say that a master's would be more for like a management position, for a higher position, but entrance, just the bachelor's would do.
Okay. And those are for decently paying jobs. Do you happen to know the average salary straight out of college with it?
And I think roughly for my major or aeronautical major, I want to say anywhere between like 80 to like 120-ish.
That's entry. That's pretty nice.
Entry, yeah. The people that I know, I don't necessarily talk to them about salaries just because that's not something I'm really focused on. Like I do the major because it's what I want to do, not as much for the pay. But they all live extremely good lives. I don't see them struggling in any way, shape, or form.
That's amazing. Hey, it's all about if you can love what you're doing, but at the same time get paid well for it, why not? But I love what you said. The first, that you have to really love it. Don't chase the money, chase the passion.
Exactly.
And
money follows.
Yeah. Well, what kind of advice would you give to somebody out there who doesn't know what their passion is? They're a young student right now, figuring everything out, trying to learn as much as they can, but they don't know what they love.
Be a sponge. Just absorb as much information as you can from everything around you. You know, I always had this big mentality that that's what GE classes are for, even though they seem useless a lot of the times.
I mean, we met through an art history class.
Exactly.
Yeah. Which was interesting. It was interesting.
It was. And now when I go through a church, I look, is it Catholic? Is it Gothic? You know, like now I could tell the difference.
Dude, I look at the statues and I'm like, oh, look, his right pec is slightly leaned forward. This conveys the confidence. Like, exactly. You learn something.
Yeah. And so just be a sponge and just absorb as much information as you can, and something's going to click. It doesn't have to be right away, but you know, you're going to be taking a class in like, I don't know, finance. And you're going to be like, oh man, this is really interesting. So now you take another course in finance and now you're like, okay, yeah, I see myself doing this. Or the opposite, you know, it could be like in our art history class, someone could be like, wow, I really love this, and start pursuing art history. I think 90% of the people at college going through their major just picked it just because, and it's not something that they're passionate about, and it's not something that they enjoy doing. But you know, it's about starting off, and eventually you will find something that you like. It might be later in life when you're pursuing a master's, you know, or you might get a bachelor's degree in something that you don't want to do. But eventually that putting yourself in a situation where you are exposed to a lot of different classes and a lot of different activities is going to help you find something that you want to do.
I love that. Let me ask you this, Carlos, for yourself. Dream scenario, you can have any job out there in this field that you're so passionate about and you love so very much. What is your dream? Would it be to go out to space, to work with people in it? What is it?
Very basic answer for anybody in my field would be to work for SpaceX or NASA. The big dogs in the industry, you know.
Why is that?
Just, you know, NASA is just the everyone knows NASA, you know.
Yeah, it's the holy grail.
Even if you're not from the United States, like, oh my God, NASA, like you're an engineer at NASA. Wow. And same thing for SpaceX. What they're doing right now and the pace that they're moving to revolutionize space travel is incredible. And it would be something that I would love to have an opportunity to partake in.
In which field exactly? Like actually getting normal, what is it, like recreational visits to space, or what would your dream be?
I've always said, if I can do this and I died an hour later, I would die with no regrets. And that is just seeing space from outside of Earth, whether it's suborbital or orbital. As long as I get to look down and see the blue sphere underneath me and look up and see pitch black, I will die a happy man.
Well, hey, I hope one day you will be able to live out that dream. It's a great dream. And I want to thank you so much for coming on here today, talking incredibly about your passion. It really shows, man. And thank you for joining. I hope if somebody's out there listening, you give astronautical engineering a chance if it's something you love. Bye, Carlos.
Thanks for having me.